So dudes, it's 2. We just got our leaks for our new 2.1 characters ACHERON, or Red and May if you prefer, Aventurine, and Gallagher. I'll cover each of these characters individually, so first up, naturally, is ACHERON. So, ACHERON's gonna be a 5-star Nihility Lightning character, because Black Swan, who's on Raid Up right now, is DOT Nihility. We already knew that ACHERON would most likely not be that, and besides, we already have Kafka as our, resident Lightning DOT Nihility character anyway, so it'd be kind of strange for us to have, two of the exact same archetype so soon in the game. In other words, she would most likely be some kind of, DPS Nihility character who synergizes heavily with debuffs, and lo and behold, that's exactly what she is. So, let's go over her kit. Her basic is standard, but it does give her an energy point. This energy is actually her own personal resource, and both her basic and skill give her energy, with her skill dealing splash damage like a destruction character and generating 2 energy instead of 1. As you might have guessed, her ult uses all the energy that ACHERON's accumulated to that point and then puts her in Ultra Pose? I don't know what the story is behind that name, but anyways. While she's ulted basically, ACHERON first debuffs all enemies' global elemental resist, then deals damage to all enemies multiple times. 4 times in a row in fact. For the first 3 of those 4 attacks, she also triggers Lotus Bloom on all enemies who have a Lotus stack, which does even more damage before exiting her ult state and removing all Lotus stacks that enemies might have if they're still alive. Her talent explains what her energy resource and Lotus stacks are. ACHERON normally starts a fight with no energy, and when she has enough, her ult will then become available. Each time she gets energy though, she either applies 1 Lotus stack to her target or applies it to whichever enemy has the most Lotus stacks at the time, but prioritizes elite enemies if it's not her own turn. And the reason why she can still stack Lotus on enemies is because her teammates can help her gain energy by putting debuffs onto enemies themselves. However, ACHERON can only get 1 energy from her allies this way per turn, and when enemies either die or run away, in the case of Warp Trotters that escape, their Lotus stacks get transferred to other enemies so that way they don't get wasted. The Lotus Bloom effect on her ult consumes all the Lotus stacks that its target has, maximum 3 stacks, and deals ult damage to them, and for every Lotus consumed, this damage increases by 100%. And her technique straight up kills an enemy going into a fight, I assume it's random though, deals damage to all enemies, and gives ACHERON energy to start with. We don't know how much energy she gets from using her technique, but it's probably just 1. Her first bonus ability gives her energy right as a fight starts, and again, I assume she only gets 1 energy from this. Her second bonus ability gives her more damage the more Nihility allies she has with her, up to 2, but it doesn't count ACHERON herself though. And her third bonus ability increases her damage per Lotus that her ult consumes. And lastly, her ailerons. Her E1 increases ACHERON's attack and crit rate every time an ally debuffs an enemy, and these stat boosts are permanent, or at least they last for the whole fight, and can stack a couple of times. I assume maybe like twice or 3 times, but we'll see. Her E2 increases her second bonus ability's Nihility ally cap to 3, meaning that you can now run full Nihility teams with ACHERON, and she gets 1 free energy whenever she gets her turn. Her E4 increases the ult damage received by enemies that get hit by ACHERON's own ult for a few turns. I assume this will also be considered a debuff. And finally, her E6 not only gives her even more ult damage, but it also changes her basic and skill damage to count as ult damage instead, which will be hilarious for erudition runs in the new Gold Gears mode and Simulated Universe. So, let's put this all together, shall we? ACHERON is a Nihility DPS whose game plan is to put Lotus stacks onto enemies so that way she does way more ult damage. She wants teammates to debuff enemies so that way she can get more energy, preferably other Nihility characters, to make use of her second bonus ability. As you might be able to guess, Silverwolf and Pella should be ACHERON's ideal teammates. You could also perhaps run, for example, sub DPS Kafka instead, since at least DOTs also count as debuffs, and she's also lightning too. I do want to point out a couple things here. Despite the fact that she's Nihility, ACHERON herself doesn't put a lot of debuffs on enemies. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure the only debuffs that she has are the global elemental resist that her ult has, maybe the increased ult damage debuff on her E4, and the shock DOTs from whenever she breaks enemies herself. She's like if Serval became a 5-star and switched her path to like Nihility or something. Her kit also specifically mentions that Acheron needs her energy points to use her ult, which implies that she doesn't work off the standard energy system that all other characters do. It's a similar concept, I guess, since Acheron still needs to use her basics and skills to build up her ultimate like everyone else does, but she does have the added benefit of having her teammates help her charge up her ult too, thanks to the whole, allied debuffs giving her 1 energy a turn as well. However, it also feels like Acheron's team comps are going to be more limited than we might expect, depending on how much extra damage she'll be getting from her second bonus ability. She'll obviously want at least one Nihility partner for sure, like Silverwolf or Pella, but not everyone has both of them, and for those of you who don't, you're going to have to replace them with other Nihility characters you do have, but they might not be the best partners for Acheron. Not to mention, she might have to steal Silverwolf if you have her from like another team that you have her on already. And again, I don't think Acheron really wants DOT Nihility characters on her team either. If her second bonus ability doesn't give that much of a damage bonus, then her team comps can still be more flexible, but we'll have to see how this plays out. Lastly, I want to know exactly how her ult works. It says that Acheron basically attacks 4 times in a row or something, so does that mean that she'll be doing more toughness damage than usual? Because if that's how it works, if that's the case, then she should be able to break enemies way faster than most other characters, but again, I'm sure we'll find out at some point later. I think Acheron should also be pretty free-to-play friendly. Her base kit seems solid, even with the concerns that I've mentioned so far, and her first 2 Eidolons don't seem so good to the point where you want to roll for them over her gacha light cone, for example. Like, her E1 does give her extra crit rate, and that's really nice, but remember that we now have the Pioneer Relic set that we got with Panacony that's specifically meant for Acheron, and pair that with Inert Salsodo, and she'll be getting 16% free crit rate right there. And I actually don't think her E2 is all that great either, like the extra Nihility character part specifically, not the other part, which is Acheron starting each turn with a free energy point. That's still going to be really good, but like, unless you're just memeing in like Sim Universe, what's the point of running a full Nihility team, right? Where's your abundance character for sustain? So I think Acheron should be perfectly fine at E0 for those of you who want to roll for her gacha light cone instead, or maybe just want to save for whoever the next character is. But what holds Acheron back from being a truly top tier free-to-play friendly 5-star character, however, is that if you don't get her gacha light cone, the only other decent option she has right now is Good Night and Sleep Well. She has the blade problem where the rest of the light cones in her path just don't really work on her. Which is kind of funny since Blade now has a free-to-play light cone option in Flames of Far, the new destruction light cone that we got in the MOC shop when we got Panacony. It's Showtime, the new Nihility light cone there certainly isn't, as that's meant for Black Swan and not Acheron. So my initial impressions with Acheron is that she should be very strong, given that she's meant to be an ult spammer, who works with defense debuffers like Silverwolf and Pella, or even better, both of them, to burst enemies down. We just need to see how good she'll be once we get actual concrete numbers with her and a few more details with her kit that we're currently missing. So that'll be it for the Acheron analysis. If there's anything I missed, feel free to share with it down in the comments for other people to see too. And let me know if you plan on rolling on Acheron yourself for whatever reason. I assume most of us will be. And if you liked what you saw here, make sure to like and subscribe, since I'll be putting out Gallagher's and Aventrine's videos over the next 2 days or so. Peace.